Hello and welcome to the Association Insurance Responsibilities webinar hosted by Park & Associates. My name is Robbie Korth. We also have Stacy Diana on the call with us here today. We'll be spending the next 15 minutes or so going over liability coverages and what that means for your homeowners or condo association. So a little bit about me before we jump into it. My name is Robbie Korth. I am a South Florida native. I found one of the few left when I moved back home in 2018. I spent about 10 years away from Florida. In my time doing so, I received my corporate communications degree from Baylor University, where I also played Division I tennis. After I graduated college, I decided to go work for USLI, where I worked for 4 years as a marketing rep, where I was the main point of contact for 300 independent insurance agencies, similar to what we have at Park & Associates today, where I was able to aggregate that experience and bring it back to our company. I have also received my Certified Insurance Counselor designation in 2019. I am recently engaged, and me and my beautiful fiance have 2 dogs and 1 cat. You see a couple of pictures of our dogs there on the screen. Stacy, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you?
I'm Stacy Diana. I've lived in South Florida since 1993. I've worked at Park & Associates for 15 years, focusing on associations, and have 26 years of insurance experience in Southeast Florida. I handle all of the association insurance for Park & Associates. I've had my CISR Elite designation since 2004. I'm the mother of 2 college students, 1 soon to be graduating US, and I have a dog and a cat.
Thanks, Stacy. We're lucky to have you on the call today. A little bit about Park & Associates before we jump into the heart of the presentation. Park & Associates is a family-run, boutique, independent insurance agency that has been providing property and casualty insurance solutions in Florida since 1975. Our focus today is on commercial property, association, and business insurance, and our team has combined over 100 years experience in this area, which is one of the toughest areas to write insurance in the entire country. Our goal is to always offer coverage-centric insurance solutions, and I always say, let our team of consultants get you the coverage that you need at a price that you can afford. As Stacy mentioned, she does handle all of the associations for Park & Associates. Today, we write over 200 associations just in Southeast Florida and are actively looking to grow that client base as well. At Park & Associates, we make 3 promises to each and every single one of our clients. The first one is that we respond to any inquiry that our office receives within 3 business hours. That does not mean that we'll have an answer for you in that time always, but you will at least know that a real person hears your need and concern and is actively working on solving that for you. We also automatically market any renewal increase of 10% or more on your behalf, along with continuously monitoring your insurance program to shop at our own discretion or at your discretion when you request us to do so. We also conduct semi-annual reviews with every single one of our clients. That's typically done in the form of a short questionnaire, about 5 questions. We send out halfway through your policy term to see if any exposures have changed so we can catch that before your renewal and make sure your insurance program is as up to date as it can possibly be. Here you see some pictures of our consulting team. You have myself, Robbie Korth, Kara Park, our former president, now vice president, Stacy Diana, who's with us on the call today as well. And then Joyce Blanchard is another one of our commercial insurance consultants who helps out in the association, business, and property insurance world. We also have Joanna Jendroska and Rosie Landisi. Those are 2 of our personal insurance consultants. They help out for any of those of you who are living within the association in need of condo, renters, homeowners, flood, umbrella, RV, any of that personal type of insurance. Joanna and Rosie are the 2 that can help you out with that. Without further ado, we're going to jump into the heart of the presentation now. First, we're going to go over your policy conditions and why it's so important to read those. We're then going to talk about the liability coverages. Start with general liability, work our way to hired and non-owned liability, then liquor liability, and we'll wrap it up with umbrella insurance. Once we finish those, we will go over some frequently asked questions that Stacy and I receive on an almost daily basis. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Stacy and let her take it from here.
Hello, everybody. We're going to talk about the policy conditions and why it's very important that you read them. Every policy has policy conditions, and your general liability policy has them as well. The conditions are a prerequisite of coverage. If you don't abide by the conditions of the policy, the carrier can deny a claim should you have one. One of the most common conditions on a policy is if you know of any situation that could lead to a claim, you need to notify the carrier of that situation. Failure to do so could result in a carrier denying a claim. So for instance, if you get a note from a homeowner that they want to file a claim, something happened, whether it's that somebody slipped over a raised sidewalk or whatever the situation is, and you don't let the carrier know at the time that somebody slipped and fell, and then 6 months later you get sued, but they show that they sent you a letter about this 6 months before, the carrier could deny coverage for that because you didn't notify them timely. We're going to now jump into the general liability coverage, which is in the policy forms is CG0001. The general liability has an each occurrence limit. The each occurrence limit covers bodily injury and property damage. Bodily injury is sickness, disease, or any other kind of bodily injury sustained, which could include death. Property damage is physical injury to tangible property or loss of use of tangible property, which would be property of others. It's written on an occurrence basis, which would mean it'd be an accident including continuous or reported exposure to substantially the same general terms or conditions. It's third-party liability such as slip and fall. The aggregate limit is the maximum that gets paid in the policy period, which is normally double the occurrence limit. Personal and advertising injury is also included. This is also known as defamation of character or libel and slander. An example of this would be, say, for instance, one of the board members is talking to his next door neighbor after a board meeting and mentions that Mrs. Smith is behind on her maintenance payments. And Mrs. Smith walks by and hears that. She could sue for defamation of character or slander because he's now made her look bad to his neighbor. Fire damage, which is now also known as damage to rented premises. This would come into play should you rent, say, the school out for your annual meeting and you bring your own coffee maker. You know the cord's a little frayed, but it should be fine for tonight's meeting. While at the meeting, the cord catches on fire and causes damage to the school. The damage to rented premises would provide coverage in that situation. Medical payments is also known as no-fault medical coverage in the event of a claim. What this is where the insurance company will agree to pay up to the limit on the policy, which is normally $5,000, of medical bills only should somebody, say, slip and fall and get hurt. They're not going to pay them anything other than their medical bills, and you have to provide proof of what your bills were. This is used as a deterrent so that people don't sue. Some of the biggest exposures your association will have are dog bites, and for whatever reason, somebody's dog bites somebody, they always seem to bring in the association into those claims, even though the association has no negligence in the part of a dog bite. But you're always brought in and the companies do have to defend. Slip and falls are a huge exposure, whether it be your pool exposures, an uneven sidewalk, a parking stone that someone trips over, or a tree root. We've, in our office, had a claim where there was a homeowner walking his dog. The dog got away from him. He was chasing after his dog and he tripped over some raised tree roots and was given a pretty large settlement because he did sustain some hefty injuries. The gates at the guardhouse are also very big claims, whether it's the gate arm coming down too soon and hitting a car and scratching it, or the metal gates closing too fast and scratching and denting a car. These would get paid under your general liability. Other exposures would be the defamation of character or slander, like we talked about with Mrs. Smith and the maintenance payments. Unit owners, mortgage companies, insurance companies coming back after the association's insurance company to subrogate for interior damage is becoming a huge claim. What this means is in a condo, a villa, a townhome, where the association is insuring the residential building, if the unit owners have water damage, for instance, and say it's coming from the roof and it damaged the interior of the home, their insurance company then goes back after your insurance company saying you were negligent, it was your roof, you should have had it repaired. In a lot of cases, you don't even know the roof is leaking, but the two companies then have to sort it out and figure out whether the association is negligent or not. Association's irrigation systems. Sometimes your irrigation systems, while your sprinklers are on, it's repeatedly hitting the house of the person in the community. And it could cause damage to their home, whether it be water getting in through a window or a crack in the stucco that nobody even knew about. the association would be negligent because it was their sprinkler system and the coverage could pay for the damage to the homeowner's property. We're now going to talk about hired non-owned auto. The biggest question I always get when people see this on their policy is, why do we have auto coverage? We don't even have an auto. Well, hired non-owned auto coverage is important for associations because the hired auto would provide coverage if you rent a bus to sponsor a trip to the casino or to a show. If the bus should get into an accident on the way to that event and people are injured, they could sue the association as well as the bus company because you hired that bus company. Non-owned auto is important for the board members because if you're using your vehicle to go to the association's management company, to the attorney, to our office for any reason, or even to go pick up supplies needed for the association, and you're doing so in your capacity as a board member, should you get into an at-fault accident while doing that, they're now going to find out in deposition what you were doing, and they could bring the association into the claim. They go after the deepest pockets, which would most likely be the association. So now the association's non-owned auto coverage will cover the association, and your personal auto will cover you. Liquor liability is another coverage to be aware of. If you're sponsoring any events, whether it be a party with any kind of alcoholic beverage like a New Year's party or any party you have in your association, liquor liability is excluded if you're in the business of selling, servicing, or furnishing alcoholic beverages. Otherwise, coverage could be contemplated on incidental liquor exposure. Most policies now are starting to have a total liquor liability exclusion, so you should always beware and read your policy. Best practice is to buy a special events policy if you are holding any of those kind of events. They're relatively inexpensive, and the claim would be covered under that policy and not under your general liability policy. Umbrella coverage is also an important coverage because it is excess coverage over your general liability, hired non-owned auto liability, employer's liability, and directors and officers. It's additional peace of mind should you have a claim and need more than what the underlying coverages have. It's a follow form, so it follows the same coverages as the general liability, hired non-owned auto liability, employer's liability, or directors and officers. An average premium for a $5 million umbrella is about $1,000. The limits can go anywhere from $1 million to $50 million. It's all what you can sleep at night and make you feel comfortable knowing you have enough coverage so that the association is covered properly. It's rated on the number of homes, and in our office, I would say more than 90% of the associations we insure do carry this coverage, and we do recommend that all associations have an umbrella.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stacy, for all that great information regarding liability coverages and umbrella insurance. Now we want to jump into some frequently asked questions. As we said at the beginning of the presentation, these are questions that we get on an almost daily basis at this point. The first one regards future insurability based on prior claims. So, Stacy, if we're an association that has had claims in the past, how does that affect our ability to purchase insurance moving forward?
Well, the companies look at when they're renewing your insurance, they look at frequency and severity. So if you're an association that has a frequency issue where you're filing a lot of claims, that could look very badly on you. Or if you've had a very large claim, that could look bad on you to your current carrier. But sometimes when we have to shop at another carrier, we'll look at that severity issue and say, oh, well, it was a one-time deal, and they'll be a little more lenient. But frequency, they're not very lenient on.
Thanks for that explanation. What about vendors? Do we list vendors as additional insured on our insurance policy if they request to do so?
Vendors should never be listed as an additional insured on the association's policy. The association should always be listed as an additional insured on your vendor's policy. You're allowing them to come into your community. Should they hit a homeowner's car, damage a homeowner's mailbox, damage anything of somebody else's, you want to make sure that if you get brought into that because you brought them onto the premises, that their policy is providing coverage for you as well as for them.
Gotcha. Now, what about this one? If we've received a reservation of rights letter, First and foremost, what is that? And if we receive one, what do we do next?
A reservation of rights letter. Once you file a claim, the carriers will send you a reservation of rights letter. It means that they're reserving the right to deny the claim at a later date should they find that the claim was not from a covered cause of loss. If they do that, they can come back after you and ask you to repay them all of the claims expenses that they've already paid. We would recommend that you have a reserve account to hold some funds aside just in case this does happen.
And last but not least, this is the question that I think I personally get the most during COVID-19 times. If we're an association and we want to open up our pools, our common areas during COVID, are we exposing ourselves to liability lawsuits from COVID-19? And if we are, can we find coverage under our insurance policy for that?
Almost all policies today are having the communicable disease exclusion, which would exclude coverage for COVID-19. We actually anticipate that exclusion will continue to remain on the policy, much like the terrorism exclusion is still on the policy since 9/11. The policies will not provide coverage for COVID, but there is a legal defense policy that would provide defense for the claims only. So it would only cover the legal fees. It would not cover indemnification or any other costs associated with a claim.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for answering those questions, Stacy. So where do we go from here? You've spent the last 15 minutes or so listening to a lot of different insurance information regarding liability coverages, and I'm sure you're wondering what your next steps are now that you have this information. Well, one of the things you can choose to do is come and work with Park & Associates. Why would you want to do so? On the screen here, we have a few reviews from property managers and property management companies that have partnered with us over the last several years and the results that they have seen since doing so. So take some time to read what's on the screen. I want to highlight on the first one where Paul Patty said he was originally unaware of how a partnership with our agency would be of any benefit to his business, but after taking the time to understand how we operate, he saw the value in a partnership with us, and that relationship is carried through to this day. We also have Kathy Rooney, who has been working with us for over 12 years now, and with Stacy specifically loves working with her because not only is she extremely knowledgeable, but she takes the time to carefully review her insurance needs and then price them out to make sure they're getting the best coverage and the best rates. So what you can do is you can schedule a 30-minute risk assessment with either Stacy or myself. We block off time on our calendar specifically to be able to spend time with those of you that listen to this, to be able to help you better understand some of the issues we talked about today, or even dive into your association and some of these specific issues that you might be facing. You can schedule your risk assessment by calling or emailing us, and all of our information is going to be on the next couple of slides at the end of the presentation. So I heavily encourage you to take advantage of these. It's a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about how insurance can help protect you and your association. So we have another webinar, or another few webinars coming up over the next several months here. We're going to do a webinar strictly dedicated to directors and officers coming out sometime in late February. Then we'll jump into cyber liability insurance coverage in March, talk about what the specific issues around cyber liability for an association might be and why that coverage is so important for you today. And then in April, we'll jump into employers liability and that coverage and why it's so important for you and your association. So please stay tuned for those webinars coming out soon. I want to thank each and every one of you who've taken the time to listen to this presentation. I hope you've gained something of value from this, and I also hope that you reach out to us to schedule that risk assessment. You have all of our information on the screen right now. You have our office's number, both mine and Stacy's direct phone number and email address, a link to our website, and I also encourage you to go check us out on Facebook and LinkedIn. We're continuously updating content on a weekly basis there. And then last but not least, please go check out our blogs. Those are hosted on our website. We update those on a bi-weekly basis, and over the last several months, those have been specifically dedicated to association insurance issues to build off of the content that we have here. So again, thank you so much for listening to this call. We hope you gained some value, and we look forward to talking to you via a risk assessment coming soon.